What up, everybody? This is Chris Orozco with Operation Moksha, and today we're talking about how to actually overcome toxic masculinity. And I'm going to talk about it from two different perspectives because there's two different versions of toxic masculinity that I've noticed, and I think they're both incredibly important to acknowledge and talk about how to overcome. And I'm doing this because I made a video 2 weeks ago addressing how things like the Gillette ad actually make toxic masculinity worse from the perspective of me, someone who used to be one of those guys. And so someone wrote in asking me to talk about how to actually overcome it. And so that's what I'm doing today. And before I go into the two different versions, I want to give you a little bit of my backstory as to why I know about this, because this is from my own personal experience. It's not just because I read a bunch of articles and stuff. This is because I used to be a toxic person and I overcame it. I used to be both versions of this toxic person. So a little bit of my backstory is, my dad died when I was a little kid. And so what I learned early on was that bad things can happen to me and I'm absolutely helpless to do anything about it. And so this sense of helplessness infuriated me. I couldn't fucking stand how helpless that I felt. And so I over-identified with my strength. And I took all my empathy and my compassion and anything that I would make me feel feelings of weakness, and I threw it into my shadow, which is the psychological term for the part of our unconscious mind that holds the part of ourselves that we reject. In response to how helpless I felt, and also in a culture that tells you that men aren't allowed to be weak, that men have to be strong, we have to get women, we have to be successful, we have to be wealthy, and if we don't, then we're essentially failures as human beings. In a society like that, it's no wonder that I did what I did, because I wanted to be not weak. I wanted to be strong. And so I was a liar. I was a cheater. I would go into rage blackouts and just, hurt whoever was in my vicinity. I would get into fights. I was just a fucking dickhead. And after long enough so this is one side, when we identify with our strength to the detriment of our weakness. And then the other side is what happens when you realize that that's not a really good way to go and you've never been taught how to integrate those things. What happens is we get the idea, which, things like the Gillette ad kind of say, is you just don't do the bad things anymore and you only do the good things. But they don't actually tell you how to integrate that into a holistic worldview. They just say, don't do bad things, do good things instead. And that doesn't really give us anywhere to go. So what I did was I took all the parts of myself that were making me do bad things and I shoved those into my shadow, and then I clung to the parts of myself that I thought were good, which was empathy and compassion and service and self-sacrifice and all the stuff that we're constantly told is good. But that created its own set of problems, which is the secondary form of toxic masculinity, which could potentially be called toxic femininity because it's the result of over-identifying with your more feminine nature, which is nurturing and caring. But what ends up happening is you actually end up hating the people in your life. You want to be good to these people, you want to be nurturing, you want to be compassionate, but you're doing it to the point that your own needs get ignored and you essentially get walked on and victimized and all sorts of stuff. And so because of that, you eventually learn to hate these people for not respecting you more, even though really all it is you not respecting yourself and blaming other people for it. So what happened to me that almost actually led me to kill myself was actually I wanted to be a good person so badly that I threw away all my selfishness, but that led me to be walked on and taken advantage of and hurt and bullied and all sorts of stuff. And so my thoughts eventually turned sour and I started to have these violent thoughts and violent visions of hurting people in my life. And for someone who only wanted to be a good person, that was fucking terrifying to me. And so I thought I had a moral obligation to end my life. And this is what a lot of nice guys do. This is where the incel movement and stuff like that comes from, right? You're told by, society or whatever to not be bad, but to be good instead. And that all the good things and all the rewards and women will love you if you're just good. But the reality of the situation is that's not actually true. Women don't tend to like just good guys. Women tend to be interested in integrated men who can be masculine, who can be strong, and who can do all these things, but also have access to their sensitivity. It's not one or the other. But people get this idea that if I just be good, everything will be okay. And then they find out that that's not the case. And then they get walked on and they don't get what they want while giving up the parts of themselves that would stand up for themselves. And so they blame society and they blame women. And next thing you know, they run a fucking truck into a bunch of people, right? So these are the two different versions of this. You could call it toxic masculinity and toxic femininity if you wanted to. I'm not 100% sure I'm willing to use those words, but it's close enough to understand that there's two sides to this coin. And one can create the other and vice versa. So I'm going to talk about how to overcome both of them, right? So we're going to start with the classic one, toxic masculinity. If you're just like a lying, cheating, selfish, narcissistic piece of shit, which I was. I'm saying that lovingly, referring to my own past. Where if this is where you're at, you're not actually bad. You're actually just probably scared of being weak, which is understandable. And you really just want to be strong and you want to get what you want. Totally understandable, to a certain degree, totally healthy. But at the same time, causing dysfunction in your mind and in your relationships because you're not actually able to connect to other people authentically. And you're also probably not being that compassionate or empathetic. And so people are probably calling you names a lot and probably justifiably. So what do we do about that? You are hurting people in your life. You don't want to be hurting people in your life. Because let's face it, if you're this type of guy, you know it sucks. But you can't ask for help. It just sucks. It's scary to go into a rage blackout or not know what the fuck happened. And to find yourself making these mistakes over and over and over again, it isn't fun. It's scary. And you wonder if there's something wrong with you. And you think that you're bad. But you can't actually afford to process your emotions, so those feelings don't go anywhere and they just get worse. And your behavior gets worse. So what the fuck do? You acknowledge that the only thing keeping you imbalanced is how much you despise weakness. That's it. You just acknowledge how much you despise weakness. And then, if you can acknowledge how much you despise weakness, you can find out why you despise weakness so much. And it'll be different from person to person. For me, I just hated the idea of being helpless. I hated the idea that there wasn't anything I could do. But the fact of the matter is that sometimes we are helpless. In fact, one of the most important elements of being a happy, healthy human being is realizing where you are helpless and learning to love life in the face of that. You're going to die. All your relationships are going to end. You're going to feel pain, probably on a daily basis. And you don't know when you're going to go or any of your friends are going to go. We're all helpless to all of this, and there's nothing we can do about it. And people will hurt you. People will betray you. People will reject you. People will dislike you. We are completely helpless to all of this. And if we can accept our helplessness and find strength in the face of it, that's real strength. Just death alone. If you can accept that you're helpless to death and there's nothing you can do about it and you're going to die one day, that's how you get the most out of life, is by realizing and fully accepting how temporary it is. And the fact that you can't do shit about it, you're not even guaranteed the next 5 minutes. My house could collapse in the middle of recording this video. But I'm going to love my life anyway. And so for you, you may have different reasons. You may have different things to accept. I'm not exactly sure what your experience is. But at the end of the day, this level of dysfunction, of this like narcissistic, almost pathology, is due to how much you detest the other thing. So you accept the fact that you detest the other thing and love yourself in the face of that. Like, hating weakness and all that doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that you hate weakness. And so and what that means is that you hate half of yourself. So if you can have compassion for the fact that what you really hate is you, then you can kind of flip this whole thing around. And you can say, wow, this part of me hates me. Why is that? Let me have compassion for the fact that this part of me hates half of me. Figure out why. See what I can do to help this part of me. And for me, it was, first of all, accepting where I'm helpless and learning to love myself in the face of it and learning to face the world as it is, even though I'm helpless. And then identifying what I can control, which is how I identify myself, how I react to the face of helplessness, how I react to my emotions, how I react to the world around me, my practices, my goals, my values, my boundaries. These are all things that I am in control of. And so I control them to the degree that is healthy to me while accepting where I'm not. And that breeds emotional and psychological balance, which is really all we want in the first place. And so when you can do that, you can build a healthier relationship to whatever you consider to be weakness, or maybe like you're afraid of connecting to others because of rejection, which again, you have no control over. People are just going to reject you, and you don't really get to say if and when that's going to happen. Even at your best, people will still reject you, and there ain't a goddamn thing you can do about it. So there's more strength in accepting that and living life at 100%, even in the face of those things. There's much more strength in that, rather than running away from it and clinging to your strength. There isn't really a whole lot of honor in that. But there is honor in being able to face the world as it is, as imperfect as it is, and as potentially harmful as it is. There is honor in that. So that's essentially how you deal with that version of toxic masculinity. And if you have any other questions about it, please let me know. I'd be happy to go further into detail. Now, the other side of it, which could potentially be the feminine shadow, is when you realize you're a toxic person. You're like, I don't want to hurt people anymore. I want to be a good boy from now on. And you take all that shitty stuff and you put that in your shadow, and you over-identify with the goodness. Or what you're largely told is good, which is self-sacrifice and compassion and empathy and nurturance and all that stuff. Generally the more feminine traits. And please don't hear me as saying that masculine and feminine are strictly adhering to men and women. That would be a really dumb thing to get in an argument with about this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about energies. The fact that I've embodied both should hopefully tell you that I'm not talking about genders. I'm talking about a series of personality traits, and I'm using masculine and feminine because that's what they've been called throughout the history of humankind. So I'm not talking about gender issues. I'm talking about energetics and personality traits. So when you disown your more masculine side and you cling to the feminine side, that breeds its own level of dysfunction, because generally we're told that if you do the good things and don't do the bad things, then everyone will love you and everything will be great. But that's a fucking lie. And when we become aware of the fact that it's a lie, and so not only are we lying, or we're being lied to, but we're giving and giving and giving with this false hope that everything will work out when we do it, at the expense of the part of ourselves that would actually do what we want to do. We give up our selfishness. Therefore, we give up our ability to set boundaries or stand up for ourselves. We give up our ability to identify and pursue our dreams. We give up our ability to define our own sense of values and what matters to us and what's going to anchor us in reality. We give up all of that when we give up our more masculine side. So not only are you believing a lie, but that lie is actually robbing you of the things that would allow you to fulfill what it was supposed to fulfill in the first place. So, again, the only thing to do is to acknowledge that you've rejected all this other stuff, and it's likely in a state of disease, because what happens is you'll eventually learn to hate the people that lied to you or whatever, or aren't playing the game the way you think it should be played, which is where incels come from, like I said before. They buy into this dream that if I disown all this toxic masculine shit and I'm just a good guy, that women will love me. And everyone will love me and everything will work out. But anyone who's ever done that knows that's not the case. Feminine women don't tend to be attracted to feminine men. There's a polarity. Masculine people in general tend to be attracted to feminine people and vice versa. It's the yin and the yang. This is energetic polarization that's existed for as long as human beings have, and this is where Tai Chi comes from, and all these different ancient practices are born from this polarity and magnetism. And so if you're attracted to feminine people and you give up your masculinity, you're not doing what's going to get you that attention. You're going to do what's going to make it so that they don't like you. And so there's just this really bizarre paradigm that we've allowed ourselves to believe in, that is just false. And so the thing to do is to acknowledge that you've thrown all that away because you've deemed it as bad. You've deemed half of your personality as bad. And so you say, wow, I can have compassion for the fact that I've done that. Why have I done that? How can I find better uses for this? Can I stand up for what I want? Can I hold my boundaries? Can I identify my values and my desires in a way that's still compassionate and still aware of the impact that I'll have on other people? Sometimes you will need to hurt people. Like if you stand up for a boundary where it's like someone's interested in you romantically, but you don't return it, then it's like the good thing to do is hurt that person by being honest with them as lovingly and compassionately as possible about the fact that you don't feel the same way. Ripping that Band-Aid off is actually the most compassionate thing you can do. But if you're so afraid of hurting other people that you won't allow yourself to do it, well, you're actually taking a less ethical path. So sometimes you do need to hurt people. Sometimes you do need to do things that could potentially be construed as bad in order to be a truly good person. And you need to have access to the part of yourself that stands in the truth while being as loving as possible to others. We need to be able to integrate the two. That's what psychological balance and harmony looks like. Integration between masculine and feminine, the two parts of ourselves. Carl Jung figured this out a long time ago. And people way smarter than him, way further back, figured this out a long time ago. It's about harmony between these two things, the dark and the light, yin and the yang, masculine and feminine. This is an ancient thing we're talking about. And so the question is, which side have you identified more with and why? And what can you do about it after you've vented and allow yourself to figure out what's going on? Because when you figure out what side you're more identified with, you vent all the reasons why, you learn about why, you can think clearly about why, and then you figure out what you want to do with it in the interim. Because you want to be good to people, you want to be loving, while still making a stand for what's true for you, and you want to pursue your dreams and hold your boundaries and your values and all that while being loving. So that's essentially the game we're playing, and that's a brief overview about how to go doing it. If you want more detail about any of this, please let me know, because I can make videos. I can take this apart and make videos about any element of this. So please let me know what else you'd like to know, or any part of what I said you'd like me to go deeper on. Or if you want individual help with this, you can reach out to me and I'll get on the phone with you and help you figure out what you've put into your shadow and why, and then what to do about it. I can help you figure this out in 20 to 30 minutes and I won't charge you for it. If you're really serious about figuring this out, then hit me up. If you're not serious about it, if you just want to talk concepts, then please don't. I only want to talk to people that really want to make changes in their lives. And even if you don't sign up for my course, then I still want to talk to you. If I can still help you figure out where to go next, I'll feel like I did a good thing. And then if you decide you want my help, then fucking awesome. I'll totally help you. But if not, then no harm, no foul. I just want you to be free. So thanks for watching. Reach out if you have any questions, if you want me to make more videos about whatever. And I will talk to you later.